Good morning. Good morning. Grab yourself a cup of coffee, get settled in. I will be right with you. Drop me a note in the comments. Let me know you are here, my friend. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Happy Thursday. Happy International Men's Day. Did you know? Did you know? Drop me a note in the comments and let me know if you knew that today was in fact International Men's Day. Welcome to Men Up with Mike. My name is Mike Cameron and I will be your host. This is the show where we talk all things leadership, personal development, and really just becoming the best version of you, all through the lens of what it means to be a dude, what it means to be a man. And today I wanted to talk a little bit about this very little known day called International Men's Day. Good morning, Anne. You did not know that today was International Men's Day. I know, because we can't really talk about it all that much, it seems. And while there may be some valid reasons for that, it's also a problem. It's actually a fairly substantial problem that we can't have the conversation. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about what International Men's Day means to me in particular, and really unpack that a little bit. So again, I would love to hear your guys' thoughts, what you think, what you feel. Do you recognize, do you celebrate International Men's Day? My guess is you probably don't. And yeah, most guys don't. There's no valid reasons, none, says Anne, not to recognize this. Well, I think the pushback comes in this feeling that, you know, men reap the rewards of the patriarchy every single day. We have some built-in advantages simply because of our gender. And I'm not going to argue that, but what I do want to recognize, and what I do know is important that we recognize, is that there's a price that patriarchy, that privilege comes at a cost, at a price. And that's where we need to have that conversation. We need to be able to unpack that. And the fact that we can't have bigger conversations around International Men's Day just really speaks to the problem itself. Anne's calling bullshit on this. Thank you, Anne. I like it. I'm calling bullshit on this too. So this is why we're having the conversation today. So this is going to be a little bit of an expansion for me, an extrapolation, a little bit of a rant. We won't go too long today, but I did want to talk about and recognize the importance of having the conversation around International Men's Day. So for me, International Men's Day isn't about celebrating the accomplishments of men. I think, you know, we do enough of that, but where this comes important for me is to recognize, again, that price that comes with the privilege. Talk about those things that men face that are unique challenges simply because of our gender. Again, we have all kinds of privilege, we have all kinds of advantages. I'm not going to disagree with that, but there is also an awful lot of burden that comes with being a dude. And, you know, we can sit here and we can say, oh, woe is me, poor men. But the reality is the statistics bear it out. You know, 3 times more men die by suicide than women. Again, there are all kinds of, I pulled up some stats. 85%. Hey, Steve, how are you? Happy Thursdays. 76% of suicides are men. 85% of homeless are men. Yeah, again, there's all kind of statistics that sort of bear out some of the challenges that we have as men. And again, that's not to take away from our privilege. It's not to take away from the advantages that our gender gives us. But I think just because we have advantages doesn't mean we can't talk about the challenges that we face. And when we're talking about men's mental health, in particular in an era of COVID, for me, that's what International Men's Day is about. It's about being able to have this conversation and talk about this weight that men feel. And again, I work with guys on a very regular basis. I work in group environments. I work in one-on-one environments. I work with, high-performing CEOs, to sort of your average Joe. And there is a universal truth. Men everywhere are struggling because they lack that permission to emote. They lack that permission to feel. Vulnerability is seen as weakness. Showing up with emotion is seen as weakness. We talked about this in our men's group yesterday, this pandemic of loneliness that we're seeing across the globe, and in particular in men, because for whatever reason, we've been brought up, we've been conditioned that we've got to go it alone, that we have to remain stoic and suck it up and bury or suppress how we feel. And that anytime we actually express emotion, we feel that it's showing weakness. And the amount of damage that does psychologically is substantial. So we need to have an opportunity to have this conversation. Every year, International Men's Day has a theme. Again, probably didn't know that because you probably didn't know there was an International Men's Day. And again, like I said, I'm not talking about an opportunity to celebrate how wonderful the accomplishments of men are. I'm talking about a day for me in particular to recognize the challenges, the struggles that men face, and take them out of the shadows. Out of the shadows. I love it. My buddy Alan, his company is called Out of the Shadows. And that's what he talks about, is pulling this out of the shadows and into the light. And for me, that's what International Men's Day is all about, being able to pull this out of the shadows and into the light. So the theme for International Men's Day in 2020 is better health for men and boys, with the aim to make practical improvements to the health and well-being of the male population. Again, a healthy man makes a better society. I've talked about this ad nauseum. When I work with guys, my aim is to help them reconnect with their emotional selves, because frankly, emotionally connected men don't fucking kill people. Emotionally connected men make better fathers. Emotionally connected men make better partners. They make better leaders. They make better followers. They make better citizens. They make better human beings, and they don't take their own lives. So it is important to have this conversation. It is important to recognize that there is, in fact, a day to talk about men. There is a day where we can have this conversation. And like I said, this year is about focusing on better health for men and boys. Because a healthy male population, both emotionally and physically, is good for everybody. I often talk about that. When we can have this conversation for men and allow men to really show up and express themselves and drop some of that stereotypical masculine bullshit, create an environment where guys can just show up as their true selves, it starts to change things. And then we don't need to have as much conversation on the equality side of the equation, because when we can get guys reconnected with their emotional selves, they become more confident, they become less insecure. And it's the insecure that oppress and keep others down. So if we can have this conversation and really allow men to step into who they are, to fully express themselves, both that masculine piece and that feminine piece, that's when the magic starts to happen. That's when connection starts to happen between men. That's when connection starts to happen between partners, intimate partners. And when connection happens and isolation goes away, we have a much healthier male population. Anne says it must be on occasion very draining to be a man carrying baggage forced on them by society. There is, for sure. But again, we all have the choice. This is the beautiful thing. As guys, we have the choice. My objective is to create the forum, to create the space where we can have this conversation, to give you permission to feel, to give you permission to show up as your authentic self, to give you permission to drop the mask of masculinity, to drop that stereotypical bullshit that we feel we need to deliver. And again, that doesn't mean that you have to turn all feminine. It doesn't mean that you have to drop those masculine parts of yourself that you enjoy. It just means that you don't have to show up that way if that's not who you truly are. And that's why, for me, International Men's Day is important, to at least have the conversation. You know, I get that we're never going to have parades in the street celebrating International Men's Day. It's just never going to happen. But that doesn't mean that we can't have the conversation about it. So when it comes to men's well-being, and in particular our mental health, because that's what suffers. We look at the suicide rates, they're through the roof. Men are far more likely to take their own life than women. Men are far more likely to commit violent crimes. Men are far more likely to be victims of violent crimes. There's a reason for this. We have to be able to have the conversation. We can't just condemn bad behaviors. We need to get to the root cause of where those behaviors stem. And having this conversation about men's health, men's wellness, is critical to solving a lot of those problems. I'll say it again. Emotionally connected men don't kill people. They don't abuse their partners. They don't suppress women in the workplace. They celebrate their accomplishments. But if we don't create a space for guys to unpack that, we'll never move the needle. Dana says, men are amazing and face many challenges. I'm thankful for all of you. Thank you, Dana. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. It's just that we need to be able to have the conversation. And I get that we've got a lot of work to do with respect to equality and gender equity. There's no question. But again, coming back to that root cause, if we solve the hurt in the men in our lives, we solve the behaviors that that hurt causes, which ultimately reduces the gender disparity, which ultimately helps create equality, which starts to really move the needle. You know, we're not just finger wagging and finger pointing. We're not just yelling at people for the bad behavior. We're actually addressing the root cause rather than slapping a Band-Aid on the symptom. So what can we do today? What can we do today? Couple of things. Thank your dude. Acknowledge your dude for the wonderfulness that he does bring to your life. Ask your guy, or ask any man in your life, the how are you question, but follow it up with the one word that makes all the difference. Really. How are you really? Create some space to have that conversation, not in passing as they're running out the door. Maybe over a meal, maybe over a cup of coffee. Sit down and get intentional about creating that space for a man in your life. It doesn't have to be your partner. Maybe it's your father. Maybe it's your son. Maybe it's a friend. How are you, really? Here on International Men's Day, tell me how you're doing, because I care. I want to know, how are you really? So that's my ask of you today. Celebrating the accomplishments is less important, but acknowledging the hurt, acknowledging the struggles, acknowledging the challenges, acknowledging the weight that so many of us men feel. Let them take off that weight vest for a day. Give them permission to feel. Give them permission to show up. All right, my friend, that's all I've got for you today. But I thought it important. Hey, good morning, Sean. I'm just wrapping up. I am just wrapping up. But we were talking about the importance of acknowledging some of the challenges that men face in this world today. All right, my friend, as always, continue to make beautiful shit happen and have yourself a fantastic day. Take care.